It had stripes in it, from what they call a flood episode. Each stripe seems so quiet for such a churning slice of history. Floods devastate millions, change continents, shorelines, whole ecosystems. So one terrified heart guttering to survive, chin to the current, grasping for air, is just one grain of sand. I looked at the riverbed. It went on for miles. Imagine when the flood came, that all the people looked like they survived it. When you throw a pebble in their pond, it ripples but goes still. But it's not true stillness. Underneath, there is a new flood happening again and again. I found some people who really did survive. They are not scared of it anymore. The flood ruled them, broke them, reshaped them, came to destroy them in dreams so vivid it seemed they were awake. Some of them wished they had been washed away. Now, they sleep soundly, love passionately, they laugh as they swim. They tell me the journey to the true place was the ugliest flood of all. But for me, it holds breathtaking beauty. Now they are the fierce current of their own lives. The dark waters of their minds run clear. When people harness this power in other ways, sometimes there is an edge of cruelty to it. Not so with them. It makes me feel so hopeful I want to shout, as if this alone can change the snaking turns of an ancient riverbed.
Wow, that's an incredible poem. We find that inside the play, The Heroine?
It's a little prologue before the action starts. The rest of the play is just pure action, but that's...
It encompasses basically what the play is about.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow.
It also addresses my relationship to it, which is just that, and then I'm just her for the rest of the story.
Mary Jane Wells' brand new one-woman show called Heroine. It's really powerful. I am so proud of you for bringing attention to something so serious and important for all women, for all people, really, because we're finding out that it's more than just women who are being violated.
In fact, it's 56% of the survivors of MST are male.
Wow.
But I don't know if that's representative across, because there's so many more men who serve than women still.
Right.
But still, it's a shocking number. You usually think that perpetrators are male and survivors are female, but not the case.
So the catalyst of you putting together, which you wrote this play and you're starring in this play, why did you want to tell this story? What happened?
Good question, because normally I actually think it's really important to go into the dark, especially with light, with comic relief, not flippancy, especially not with something like this. But you can only deal with something as dark as this if it's seeded in light, if you know what I mean. You know, that there's moments of a lot of likes. Nobody will go and see a show so dark if they're like, oh my God.
I want to commit suicide after this. I can't.
Exactly.
Right.
So although it's not a breezy comedy, there's plenty of dark humor in it, because there has to be. So the reason why it came out was because I had a friendship with somebody who came to support us on set of A Perfect Ending. And she told me a little bit of her life story then, that she was a female vet. And she said, I've written this script and I wrote you a part in it. And I was like, wow. So, but I didn't hear much about it for literally another 2 to 3 years after then. And I did the vagina monologues, the Eve Ensler play, and sort of got more turned on to exactly what Eve Ensler was about and what she was doing in Afghanistan and stuff. And she got back in touch with me, the lady in question, and said, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm trying so hard I did a trailer for this movie and I can't find funding and I don't know what to do. And I was like, God, I wish I was hooked up in Hollywood.
Right.
Like, it needs to be like a Brokeback Mountain, but for women, really. And from what I understand, the female filmmakers I've worked with who've worked in LGBT filmmaking have said the demographic to raise money is a little tough, because although the audience are very loyal for strong content, their demographic is that they will stay home and watch DVDs rather than go out to the cinema like gay men will. So, raising money for a feature is tough. And also, I'm not starry enough. So it's like the only thing I know how to do is to turn it into a piece of theatre. But there's a lot that comes up for that. One is, this is this woman's history is so dramatically compelling, but also could threaten severely to re-traumatize her by telling it. It's part of her healing process, but everything's going to come up.
Right.
So I said, I don't want you to ever regret telling me what's happened to you and what happened to you in the US Army and what happened to you afterwards and how you healed yourself. So we have to go really slowly with this, and you have to get some support, and maybe I do too.
Right.
So that we're not experts in knowing what's going to explode potentially. So let's tread carefully. So we did. And we went forward with a 15-minute scratch in a theatre exactly a year ago in Venice. And that was really to solve two questions. To answer two questions. One, how do you put military sexual trauma on stage? How do you do that?
Yeah, how do you do that?
Delicately, responsibly, and as I say, and also, how do we do it so that we don't trigger the lady in question?
Yeah.
Now her story is out, so her anonymity is of paramount importance, of course. That's how it came to me. And then somebody said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm doing this play. And they said, hey, have you seen that documentary, Invisible War? And I hadn't. And I had no idea it was part of an enormous other story. So to get to the facts, Invisible War and the play that I'm writing is about MST, which means military sexual trauma.
Right.
It's a part of the story I'm telling. It's not the whole story, but I didn't realize it was such a gigantic epidemic within the culture of the military. Not just the US military, but the UK Ministry of Defence is pretty sensitive about that because it's happening right now in Britain too. And she's just one of very many survivors. There's been 500,000 people who have been sexually assaulted in the US Army alone.
Why do you think that is happening? Is it some version of control? Why would soldiers violate someone who's trying to save your life?
It's a really good question. Invisible War goes some way to look at the culture around what happens afterwards and the culture of blame and retaliation towards the victim. But a documentary goes into why, to answer your question, is Women of War. And it's a very complicated hotbed, but most of it is to do with the fact that the military's justice system is very enclosed and it doesn't have any access. Civilian just courts and military courts are totally separate.
And there's not a great deal of accountability either, right?
Exactly. In fact, let me read you what Chuck Hagel has said about sexual trauma, because the chain of command has failed over the years for a lot of reasons. Secretary of the Army John McHugh says, we have totally failed when it comes to dealing with sexual assault. Former Pentagon Chief Counsel Jay Johnson says, the problem has become so pervasive, the bad behavior is so pervasive, we need to look at fundamental change in the military justice system itself.
Oh my God.
So Senator Gillibrand herself, she's been trying to push for sexual assault to be taken out of military control because they don't understand the nature of the actual crime. First, they don't understand that it is a crime. And from my research, from what I understand, it's not really necessarily sexually motivated. It's to do with dominance and control and the pecking order and hierarchy. And also, even just recently, and this is not touching on MST, but it's looking at the culture of discipline and relations within the Army. This American Life went on board a Navy cruise ship and talked to everybody. He said, we're not even allowed to hug each other. It's obviously you're not allowed to have relationships, and you're on a bunch of people who are hormonally at their peak all put together. I mean, that shouldn't advocate for, therefore, crime happens at all. But it's the way the military looks at MST in particular and brushes it totally under the rug that most of the victims of it have said. The attack itself was brutal and traumatic and involved torture, certainly the lady I was talking to, but the way it was dealt with is so much more traumatic. Like one woman was told to take an aspirin, another was told to work out her differences with her rapist by being in the same office with him for a year. It's sort of like buck up. That's just the Army. You don't start to go into your feelings too much here. You just buckle down and get on with things. We don't know how to deal with the fact that relationships get out of control, but these are not relationships that get out of control. It's sexual crime.